On Vanessa's birthday, she demanded everyone follow her into the sea. My boyfriend Ryan indulged her, smiling as if she were the only one who mattered. No one knew that in my past life, that same night ended with Ryan drowning me with his own hands, because Vanessa carried his child. This time I was ready. They thought they could kill me twice. But now I'll be the one to bury them. The salt in the air clung to my skin like an old memory, one I could never wash off no matter how many lives I lived. The sun had already dipped toward the horizon, staining the ocean a deep violet, while soft music drifted from the Bluetooth speakers planted in the sand. Vanessa Miller twirled barefoot across the beach, her champagne glass raised high like a crown she was born to wear. "My birthday wish," she announced loudly, her honey-sweet voice carrying across the wind, "is for everyone to come into the sea with me and film a video." The crowd around her clapped and cheered, already half drunk on her charm. She had always been good at that, gathering attention, bending the atmosphere to revolve around her. I stood among them, smiling politely, my hands folded behind me so no one would see how tightly I was digging my nails into my palm. Beside her, Ryan Carter laughed indulgently, the corners of his mouth softening in a way I had once believed was reserved only for me. "Of course, Vanessa. Anything for the birthday girl," he said. That tone. In my past life, it had fooled me into believing he was kind, devoted, someone I could trust. I knew better now. Someone in the crowd, one of Ryan's colleagues, hesitated, glancing at the darkening sea. "Isn't it a little unsafe? It's getting dark. The tide's coming in." Ryan cut him off with a scoff. "Plenty of influencers film videos like this. What's unsafe about it? It's Vanessa's birthday. We should all listen to her." Vanessa beamed at him, cheeks flushed pink with delight. Without a thought, she launched herself into his arms, the hem of her white dress fluttering around her thighs like sea foam. "Ryan, I knew you were the best to me. You'll walk at the very front with me, okay?" He nodded without hesitation, brushing a strand of damp hair from her face. It was only then that Vanessa's gaze flicked toward me, as if she had just remembered I existed. Quickly, she released Ryan's waist and stuck out her tongue in an imitation of childish innocence. "Oops, sorry, Claire. I got too excited." She giggled, placing a hand over her heart. "Ryan and I have been friends since childhood. Like siblings, really. You don't mind, do you?" Before I could answer, Ryan added smoothly, "Of course not. Claire isn't the type to get hung up on small things. What Vanessa and I have is completely pure." He turned to me, his eyes warm, his lips curling in that same gentle smile he always wore when he wanted me quiet. "Right, babe? You'd never misunderstand." Dozens of faces turned toward me, waiting for my response. But in that instant the world dissolved. The sound of the waves morphed into the bone-piercing cold of seawater swallowing my lungs. My body shivered as though drenched again, my throat closing around salt and despair. I could feel Ryan's hand, strong, merciless, forcing me under, his voice echoing like a demon. "You dare mention the baby? Quinn was carrying my child." I blinked hard, dragging myself back to the present before anyone could notice the flicker of terror in my eyes. Ryan's gaze sharpened instantly, catching the tremor in my shoulders. He slipped his jacket from his shoulders and draped it around me with theatrical care. "Honey, are you cold? Do you want to go back to the hotel and lie down? You don't need to go into the sea for the filming later." The guests awed in admiration. "Ryan's so considerate. Claire, you're lucky to have him. Such a perfect boyfriend." Their words stabbed at my ears, but I lowered my gaze to hide the hatred burning behind my smile. "Lucky? If only they knew." I forced a soft laugh, my voice warm as if nothing was wrong. "It's fine. Everyone's here to celebrate Vanessa's birthday. What matters most is that the birthday girl is happy." I glanced at Vanessa, letting just enough sweetness coat my tone. "How about this? You and Ryan lead the way and I'll film the video for you too." Vanessa's eyes glittered. Just moments ago she had been glaring at me, resentful of the compliments Ryan and I received as a model couple. But my suggestion flipped her mood instantly. She latched onto Ryan's arm triumphantly, all but glowing as she tugged him toward the waves. "Come on everyone," she called. "Let's make it unforgettable." I bent to pick up the nearby camera, my lips curving ever so slightly as I noticed the recording light still blinking. The video, Vanessa's birthday celebration, had already captured everything. From Ryan encouraging everyone to follow her, to Vanessa's cloying affection, to the murmurs of doubt ignored. Perfect. I adjusted my phone, slipping it into my pocket with a timer set for an automated call to the lifeguards. In my previous life I had begged them not to go in, warning about the dangerous currents. They had mocked me, calling me boring, unromantic. I had walked away with Ryan, leaving the others behind. That choice had altered everything, tying me to a future of betrayal and death. But this time I wouldn't stop them. Vanessa, I called sweetly, lifting the camera as they walked hand in hand toward the surf. Turn back and smile at the camera while you walk. She obeyed eagerly, flashing a radiant smile, leaning her head against Ryan's shoulder as though they were the stars of a romance film. He looked down at her, lips curling with the kind of indulgence that once made me weak. I steadied the lens, catching their perfect image against the horizon. Two lovers glowing in the last light of day. But behind them, under the darkening sky, the waves were rising. Massive, merciless walls of water, surging forward with the same hunger I remembered from my death. A shiver of anticipation crawled down my spine. No one else noticed, not yet. They were too busy laughing, splashing forward, caught up in Vanessa's gravity. But I knew what was coming. The sea had already begun to roar, a warning none of them could hear. And I, smiling, steady, my hands tight around the camera, was ready to let history repeat itself. Only this time I would be the one standing safely on the shore. The first scream split the air like lightning. I had been expecting it, waiting for it, yet when it came sharp and raw against the rush of the tide, my heart still clenched. The waves were no longer gentle ripples against the sand. They had swelled into monstrous walls of water, crashing forward with a force no human body could withstand. Under the fading light, the sea looked less like water and more like an endless black mouth, hungry and merciless. Vanessa. Ryan, someone shouted, their voice nearly drowned by the roar of the ocean. I lifted the camera, steady hands capturing the chaos as it unfolded. Ryan and Vanessa, who had been smiling just moments before, were now flailing as the water surged around them. Their laughter dissolved into panic. The others who had followed them screamed and tried to fight the waves, but the current dragged them farther and farther from shore. It was exactly the same. Exactly as it had been in my past life. The memory burned vivid in my mind, the nightmarish déjà vu of that storm. How I had stood on this very beach before, warning them not to go, only to be mocked as cowardly. How Ryan had wrapped an arm around me and pulled me away, whispering, "Ignore them, Claire. They're reckless." How afterward he had worn grief like a cloak, claiming he had lost everything that night except me. And I, foolish, blind, desperate to be loved, had married him to heal his pain. What a joke. This time I didn't run to him. I didn't beg him to turn back. Instead I adjusted the focus, catching the exact moment Vanessa's smile curdled into terror as a wave slammed into her. Ryan's hand shot out, clutching her wrist, but the ocean was stronger. In an instant they were both swallowed. "Help! Help us!" one of the men further out yelled, thrashing against the current. Another woman was already gone, her head vanishing beneath the foam. The shore erupted in chaos, people screaming, frozen, unsure whether to rush in or run for help. I simply lifted my phone, feeling the timer tick down. Right on cue, the automated call connected. The lifeguards had been notified. I exhaled slowly, the corners of my lips curling. There was no need to act like the hero tonight. I didn't owe them anything. Within minutes, the flashing beams of lifeguard lights broke through the darkness. Their voices cut through the storm, commanding and urgent, as they dove into the water with ropes and flotation buoys. The camera stayed steady in my hands, the red light blinking. Every word, every scream, every desperate flail. It was all being recorded. I knew better than anyone how this story would end. Most of those dragged into the water tonight would not come back. Only a handful would survive. And among them, fate's cruel mercy, or perhaps my calculated arrangement, would spare Vanessa and Ryan. Sure enough, two lifeguards dragged Ryan onto the sand. He collapsed, coughing, his chest heaving. His eyes darted wildly the moment he regained breath. "Vanessa, where's Vanessa?" She appeared moments later, limp in another rescuer's arms. Her face was pale, lips tinged blue. The white dress she had been so proud of clung to her body in tatters, soaked through, exposing a fragility she would hate the world to see. The crowd gasped, swarming forward, voices overlapping in panic. She's not breathing. Call an ambulance. Oh my God, is she? The lifeguard knelt and began resuscitation. I watched through the camera lens, my face arranged into wide-eyed fear, my voice trembling just enough to sound sincere. Vanessa, hang on. Please, you have to hang on. Inside, my heart was steady. Vanessa's chest rose with a sputtering cough. Water poured from her lips and a ragged breath tore free. Ryan collapsed beside her, gathering her into his arms, his face twisted in frantic relief. You're okay. You're okay, he kept repeating, stroking her wet hair back from her forehead. Vanessa, I've got you. Her hand trembled weakly in his. Her eyes fluttered open, dazed, confused, but alive. I let the camera drop to my side, satisfied. Alive was enough. Alive meant she could suffer. The hospital smelled of antiseptic and grief. I sat in the corner of the waiting room, Ryan pacing like a caged animal. He hadn't spared me a glance since we arrived. All his attention had been fixed on Vanessa, as if she were the only soul in the world. The doctor emerged at last, removing his mask with a weary sigh. She's stable for now. But, his eyes darkened. I'm afraid the pregnancy could not be saved. The trauma was too severe. And due to complications, she will not be able to conceive again. The words dropped like stones in the sterile air. Ryan froze mid-step. His mouth opened but no sound came. For a moment he looked like he'd forgotten how to breathe. What did you say? His voice cracked raw. She can't. The doctor shook his head. I'm sorry. Ryan staggered, catching himself against the wall. His knuckles went white as he pressed his fist to his mouth, muffling a sound that was half sob, half roar. I lowered my gaze, hiding the flicker of triumph sparking in my chest. My lips trembled just enough to appear stricken. Oh Ryan, this is awful. Poor Vanessa. He turned on me then, his eyes bloodshot, wild. The baby's gone? His voice was hoarse, desperate. The baby, Claire, the baby's gone. I tilted my head, feigning confusion. How did you know she was pregnant? I only found out after bringing her to the hospital. The color drained from his face. His mouth opened, closed like a fish gasping on the shore. Finally he stammered, She told me before. I smiled inwardly. So reckless. So careless. He didn't even realize how much he'd given away. Out loud I whispered, how unfortunate. Not only did she lose the baby, but she'll never be able to have children again. Ryan's expression twisted. He shoved past me, staggering toward Vanessa's room, his every breath ragged with panic. I stayed where I was, folding my arms, letting the weight of satisfaction settle deep in my chest. The cracks had begun. Ryan's perfect facade, Vanessa's perfect dream. They were splintering, piece by piece. And I had all the time in the world to watch them shatter. Hospitals always smelled the same to me. Antiseptic sharpness, recycled air, the faint undercurrent of something metallic. In my previous life I had spent months in these sterile hallways, clutching my belly, hoping the nausea meant life and not doom. Ryan had been there then too, sometimes holding my hand, sometimes absent for days with flimsy excuses. I had told myself he was just busy. How pathetic. Now I leaned against the cool white wall of the waiting room, arms folded as Ryan all but wore a trench in the tile with his pacing. His hair was still damp from the seawater, his shirt clinging to him in wrinkled patches. But he didn't care. Every second his eyes flicked toward the door to Vanessa's room, his lips moving soundlessly, prayers or curses I couldn't tell. When the nurse finally wheeled Vanessa out, her frail frame tucked under hospital sheets, Ryan rushed forward like a man possessed. Vanessa, I'm here, he whispered, dropping to his knees beside her bed as if she were some goddess descending from the heavens. It's okay, you're safe now. I won't leave you. She looked up at him with watery eyes, pale lips trembling. Her fingers weakly clutched his sleeve. Ryan, the baby. His face twisted, and for a moment I saw naked anguish there. He pressed her hand to his lips, tears glistening at the edges of his eyes. I know. I'm sorry. I should have protected you. It's my fault. The nurse glanced at me sympathetically, mistaking my silence for heartbreak. If only she knew what really churned beneath my calm surface. Vanessa's gaze slid toward me then, and I saw it, the flicker of hostility hiding behind the weakness. The corners of her mouth quivered, but her words were steady enough. This is because of Claire. The air stilled. Ryan stiffened beside her. I arched a brow, masking my satisfaction with a puzzled frown. Because of me? Vanessa, what do you mean? Her fingers tightened around Ryan's sleeve, and her eyes brimmed with pitiful tears. You called the lifeguards, didn't you? The nurse said it was you. If you already knew there was danger, why didn't you stop us from going into the sea? Why didn't you call sooner? A low murmur rippled among the visitors still lingering nearby. I could feel the shift, subtle and insidious, as sympathy for the pale victim in the hospital bed began to harden into suspicion of me. Ryan latched onto her words like a lifeline. He turned, his gaze searing into me, raw with grief and rage. She's right. You knew? And you still let Vanessa go into the water. I let my eyes widen, forcing a tremor into my voice. Ryan, everyone was there, you saw it. I didn't stop you because you wouldn't have listened. You never do when it's Vanessa's idea. For a heartbeat, silence. Then Vanessa let out a weak sob, burying her face against Ryan's chest. See? He admits it. She wanted this to happen. She's always jealous of me. The words were a dagger wrapped in silk, designed to pierce and still seem innocent. Ryan's arm circled her protectively, and he shot me a look that could have burned holes through steel. Vanessa, don't cry. Claire doesn't mean it. She just doesn't understand what we have. She would never. She's not cruel. His voice faltered, but his gaze stayed accusing. He wanted to believe both sides. But his heart had always belonged elsewhere. I tilted my head slightly, watching them huddle together like star-crossed lovers, tragedy sharpening their bond. My smile was soft, sad, the kind of smile onlookers would interpret as resignation. But beneath it my thoughts were cold, precise. Jealous of you, Vanessa? No. Jealousy was for women who still wanted what they'd lost. What I felt was colder, sharper. I didn't want what you had, I wanted to watch you choke on it. The room thickened with tension. A few whispers carried to my ears. Do you think she really? It does sound suspicious. Perfect. Let them whisper. Let them speculate. Seeds of doubt, once planted, never stayed buried. I stepped closer, lowering my voice just enough to force Ryan and Vanessa to strain to hear. I only wanted the birthday girl to be happy. If that makes me guilty, then I suppose I am. Vanessa's lips parted, triumph flashing in her eyes before she masked it with another pitiful sob. Ryan predictably stroked her hair and whispered, "Don't worry. I'll protect you. From anyone. Even me, Ryan. You'll protect her from me?" I bit back a laugh and instead offered them a look of hollow apology before turning away. My phone was heavy in my pocket, filled with recordings and proof. Every glance, every careless word, every contradiction, they were stacking up like dominoes. And I was patient enough to watch them fall. Later that night, when the visitors had trickled away, I passed by Vanessa's room again. Through the small window in the door, I saw Ryan perched at her bedside, his hand wrapped around hers. Their heads were bent together, whispers threading the silence. I couldn't hear the words, but I didn't need to. I had seen this picture before. In another lifetime, in another ending. Only this time I wasn't the naive girl waiting in the shadows. This time I was the one painting the stage. And their tragedy had only just begun. The storm outside had long since passed, but the storm online was only just beginning. I knew it before the first notification buzzed my phone. Vanessa was never one to lick her wounds quietly. If tragedy struck, she would turn it into theater. And what better stage than a live broadcast? By the time I opened the stream, tens of thousands of viewers had already crowded into the chat room. The title flashed across the screen in dramatic font. Victim of the July 21st sea disaster. My story. And there she was. Vanessa Miller. Pale, wrapped in hospital sheets, her hair artfully messy as though she had risen straight from death's grasp. Tears glistened in her wide eyes, threatening to fall with every trembling blink. "Hi, baby," she whispered hoarsely, her voice breaking perfectly on cue. I was 3 months pregnant. And now she's gone. The comments flooded instantly. "Oh my God, stay strong. How could this happen? She looks so fragile, my heart hurts. Justice for Vanessa." Beside her sat Ryan. His arms circled her shoulders, protective, tender. He patted her gently, his face shadowed with grief. To the untrained eye, he looked like a man broken, holding on to the last piece of his world. To me, he looked like a coward clinging to the role of tragic hero. "I should have protected her," he murmured, eyes cast down. This was all my fault. I'll never forgive myself. I almost laughed. He was good, I'd give him that. His timing was impeccable, his tone just right. Together they looked like a couple united by shared suffering, the kind of story audiences couldn't resist. And of course, after enough tears, after enough sniffles and quivering lips, Vanessa tilted her head to the camera. This tragedy wasn't without a cause, she whispered, her voice trembling with sorrow. If only Claire Dawson had warned us. If only she had called sooner. Maybe my baby would still be alive. The chat exploded. Wait, what? Who's Claire? She was with you, right? Why didn't she do anything? Unbelievable. Cold-blooded. There was. The trap was sprung. I leaned back in my chair, eyes narrowing as I read the accusations flooding in. My phone buzzed with messages. Some from acquaintances, some from strangers who had already dug up my social media accounts. The mob was gathering, torches lit. But unlike in my past life, I was ready. I typed slowly, deliberately, my words sharp as blades disguised as silk. Pinned comment. Vanessa, when exactly did you get pregnant? And where's the child's father? Shouldn't he be the one standing by you right now? The comment shot to the top of the chat, highlighted in bold. A hush seemed to fall over the audience. Then, like cracks spreading across glass, suspicion bloomed. Yeah, wait a second. Where is the baby's father? If she was pregnant, shouldn't he have been there? Isn't Ryan supposed to be her childhood friend? Then why does he look more like the boyfriend? Vanessa blinked rapidly, caught off guard. Her lips parted, but no words came. I smirked. Her timing was usually flawless. But grief had dulled her edges and her mind wasn't as sharp tonight. Instead of denying, instead of redirecting, she just turned to Ryan, her eyes shimmering with that same pitiful fragility. Ryan, she breathed. His face twitched, panic flaring in his eyes before he smoothed it over with a clumsy smile. Don't listen to the trolls, he said, forcing a chuckle. I was planning to propose to Claire, actually. That's why we went to the beach. Vanessa only helped me organize things. She got caught in the waves by accident. I almost applauded. The lie was desperate, flimsy, but bold enough to convince the gullible. Unfortunately for him, the internet was never gullible for long. Propose to Claire? Then why are you wiping tears off Vanessa's face? Bro, you're holding her like she's your wife. Something stinks here. Baby's gone and now he's trying to cover? The tide was turning. I struck again. Vanessa, don't be sad. The most urgent thing now is to notify the father of your child. Tell us who he is. I'll even ask the police to contact him for you. You shouldn't shoulder this alone. The chat froze. Then exploded. Yes, exactly. Who's the dad? If Ryan isn't, then who? She's dodging. He's totally dodging. Vanessa's eyes darted, panic cracking through her porcelain mask. Ryan's jaw clenched, a muscle ticking as he searched for an answer. And that was when I released my trump card. The video. Uploaded under my real name, time-stamped, unedited. The screen filled with Ryan and Vanessa, arm in arm, laughing as they mocked the hesitant voices on the shore. Oh, come on, Vanessa's voice chimed, smug and taunting. Don't be cowards. It's just water. Ryan sneered at another guest. This is Vanessa's birthday. If you're scared, leave. Nobody's forcing you, but don't ruin the vibe. The footage ended with the two of them striding proudly into the waves, dragging the others with them. Silence. A silence so heavy it could crush. Then the comments erupted into fury. I knew it. They forced people in. Shameless. People died because of you. And they tried to blame Claire? Unbelievable. Ryan was dating Claire and this is how he treated her? With another woman's baby? Trash. I leaned back, letting the outrage wash over them. On screen, Ryan's face drained of color. Vanessa trembled, her lips moving soundlessly. They hadn't expected this. They hadn't thought anyone could outplay their performance. But this wasn't a performance. This was war. By the time the stream was shut down, the damage was irreversible. Gossip blogs picked up the video within minutes. Hashtags trended. News outlets ran headlines about the sea disaster scandal. And at the heart of it, Ryan Carter and Vanessa Miller were no longer victims. They were executioners who had tried to shift the noose onto me. I powered down my laptop, the faintest smile tugging at my lips. In my past life, their lies had killed me. But this time their lies would bury them. The hospital corridors were never meant to hold this much rage. It started with murmurs, families pacing in the waiting area, whispering about the leaked footage, phones clutched tightly in their hands. Then the whispers became shouts. By the time I arrived that morning, the lobby was packed, a sea of grief and fury. "They killed my son," one man bellowed, shaking the phone that displayed Ryan and Vanessa's smug faces in the video I had released. His voice cracked, not from weakness but from the kind of grief that stripped a person raw. "My daughter was only 22, a woman wailed, her body trembling as friends tried to hold her upright. "She couldn't even swim. And they mocked her for being scared." "That Miller girl said," she said. Her sob dissolved into a scream. The crowd surged forward, spilling into the hallways, storming toward the patient wing where Vanessa was housed. I stayed a careful distance back, blending into the shadowed corner near the vending machines, my phone in hand. The lens was angled just so, recording every moment as the tide of justice swept down the sterile hallway. By the time they reached Vanessa's room, the nurses were helpless against the numbers. The door banged open, slamming against the wall. Inside, Vanessa gasped, her pale face draining even further as she scrambled upright in bed. Ryan was at her side, gripping her hand, but when the first man shoved forward, his eyes darted wildly. "This wasn't our fault," Ryan shouted, voice shrill with panic. "Yes, I encouraged them, but I didn't force anyone into the water. If you can't swim and still jump in, that's your problem." A collective gasp. Then silence. It was Vanessa who sealed her fate. She sat straighter, her chin trembling, and said softly, almost inaudibly, "Exactly. I lost my baby trying to save them. Their lives weren't worth as much as my child's." Every word carried, bouncing off the walls like a curse. The fury erupted instantly. Several people surged forward, hands outstretched, grabbing at the sheets, at her arms, at anything they could reach. Vanessa screamed, thrashing, her nails clawing at Ryan's sleeve. "Ryan, help me." For Ryan froze. His hand hovered above hers, trembling. For a second he looked like he might intervene. Then fear flashed in his eyes, sharp and selfish. In the next moment he yanked his hand away, stumbled backward, and slipped out the side of the room as the mob descended on Vanessa. Her screams tore through the hallway, high-pitched, panicked, cut with sobs of terror. Fists landed. Sheets ripped. Nurses shouted, but the storm was too strong. I lowered my phone slightly, watching with cold detachment. In my past life, Vanessa had been the one smiling as I drowned. Now she was drowning in fists and fury, and the man she trusted most had abandoned her without a backward glance. Justice wasn't always poetic. But tonight it was close enough. By the time security arrived, Vanessa was barely conscious. Blood seeped through the fresh bandages around her abdomen. Her face was swollen, lips split. She was wheeled away to emergency care once more, her cries reduced to faint whimpers. The mob was escorted out, many taken into custody, but the damage had been done. Not just to Vanessa's body but to her image. The news spread like wildfire. Vanessa Miller assaulted by victims' families. Public outrage boils over in sea disaster scandal. Online sympathy was thin. Too many had watched the video, had heard her dismiss the dead as worthless compared to her unborn child. The public had made up its mind. I walked away from the chaos with slow, measured steps, my phone heavy in my pocket with the fresh footage. Every piece mattered. Every stone I laid in their path would weigh them down until they could no longer move. That night my phone rang. Ryan's name flashed across the screen. I answered, my voice calm, almost bored. "Ryan." On the other end his tone was frantic, desperate. "Claire, thank God. You froze the credit cards, didn't you?" "Vanessa. She's hurt, she needs another surgery, and the doctors won't move forward until I pay. Please, you have to help. This is life or death." I let the silence stretch, savoring the panic in his breathing. Then I spoke, cool and precise. "We're no longer together, Ryan. I'm not giving you another cent." His breath caught. For a moment, all I heard was the ragged sound of disbelief. Then hoarse, "I didn't agree to the breakup. Claire, please, you can't just let her die like this. She's family." I laughed, then low and sharp. "Family? Is that what you call sleeping with your so-called sister? Interesting definition." "Claire, no, you're wrong. It wasn't like that. Vanessa and I were just close. You're jealous, that's all. You've always been jealous of her." I leaned back in my chair, letting his lies unravel. Then with a flick of my finger, I forwarded him the packet I had prepared. Screenshots, emails, transaction records, proof of every cent he had funneled into Vanessa's life with my money. The line went dead silent. "Good," I said softly, knowing he was staring at the evidence with wide, panicked eyes. "So you've seen it. That makes this easier. Not only will I never give you another penny, I'll also be taking back every cent you spent on her. Get ready for the lawyer's letter." "Claire, wait please." His voice cracked, desperation leaking through the cracks of his pride. But I had already hung up. For a long moment I sat in the quiet of my apartment, staring out the window at the city lights blinking like distant stars. In my past life, Ryan had drowned me for a child that was never meant to live. Now in this life he was drowning himself, financially, emotionally, socially, without me lifting a finger. And Vanessa? She was already bleeding out under the weight of her own lies. I exhaled slowly, a smile ghosting across my lips. Their destruction had only just begun. The first sign of Ryan Carter's unraveling came with the for sale sign hammered into the front yard of his childhood home. It was a large, faded house on the edge of town, the one he'd inherited after his parents passed. I had been there once years ago when he had proudly shown me the creaky staircase and the family portraits lining the walls. He'd spoken of it with reverence then, the last piece of my parents. Now it was reduced to an asset. A pile of bricks and memories he couldn't afford to keep. The sale barely covered Vanessa's second surgery and a fraction of her medication. But hospital bills were a river, endless and merciless, and the trickle of money from the house dried before he could even breathe. The tension between him and Vanessa reached me through whispers first. Nurses gossiping, neighbors whispering, a shaky video posted online of them screaming at each other in the hospital parking lot. "You ran." Vanessa's voice was shrill, cracked with rage. She jabbed a finger into his chest, her other arm clutching her healing abdomen. "When those people stormed in, you disappeared. You let them beat me half to death." Ryan's face twisted, his composure crumbling in public. "If you hadn't opened your mouth, they wouldn't have gone berserk. You had to say those people's lives weren't worth your child's, didn't you? Do you have any idea what you sounded like?" The crowd recorded gleefully, voices murmuring. The footage went viral within hours. So much for their tragic love story. When the first lawsuit notice arrived, I smiled. The families of the victims had organized quickly, their grief sharpened into determination. They filed formally against Ryan Carter, citing the footage of him pressuring their loved ones into the sea. His name was listed as the instigator, the one responsible. He tried, of course, to twist the narrative again. He went live one desperate night, his eyes bloodshot, his voice hoarse. "It wasn't me," he insisted, tears sliding down his cheeks. "It was Claire Dawson. She wanted the seaside proposal, she pushed us to do it. I begged her not to, but she wouldn't listen. But the internet wasn't so easily fooled anymore. You mocked the warning signs yourself. We saw the video. Claire wasn't even in the water. Stop trying to push the blame. Shameless." His followers dwindled. His reputation shattered. The lawsuits multiplied. Compensation demands stacked into the hundreds of thousands. And Ryan Carter had no money. That was when he turned to the shadows. I knew because I saw him, not in person but through a shaky recording uploaded by some passerby. Ryan, once so polished and untouchable, meeting in a dim alley with men who looked like they'd chew him up for sport. His hands shook as he signed something, his eyes darting, his face pale. Loan sharks. He had taken the bait. And there was no escape from those nets once you stepped inside. While Ryan dug himself deeper, I prepared my own strike. My lawyer slid a stack of documents across the polished mahogany desk, her expression sharp with satisfaction. "We have everything we need, Ms. Dawson. Financial records, wire transfers, purchases under your account redirected to Miss Miller. We'll file for full restitution." I looked down at the papers, the receipts of my past stupidity. Vacations I never went on, jewelry I never wore, bills I had paid without question. All siphoned from me, piece by piece, under Ryan's smiling lies. In my past life I'd written it all off as love. This time it was evidence. "File it," I said coolly. The summons reached Ryan the same week the victims' families dragged him back into court. I went, of course. The first time I saw Ryan and Vanessa after the lawsuits had begun to pile up, they looked less like lovers and more like adversaries forced into the same cage. The courtroom was packed, the buzz of reporters filling the air, the faint hum of cameras whirring as the trial resumed. I sat in the gallery, poised, calm, my lawyer beside me with another stack of papers ready to deliver. Ryan looked haggard. His suit hung off him like it had been borrowed from another man. His once sharp jawline was shadowed with stubble, his eyes ringed with sleeplessness. Vanessa sat beside him in a wheelchair, her silk scarf failing to hide the mottled bruises still fading along her neck and jaw. The moment the judge allowed for testimony, the fragile truce between them shattered. "You abandoned me." Vanessa's voice cracked like glass, sharp enough to slice through the tense silence. She jabbed a trembling finger at him, her other hand gripping the armrest of her wheelchair until her knuckles turned white. "That night when they came for me you ran. You let them beat me. You left me to die." Gasps rippled through the gallery. Cameras flashed like lightning. Ryan's face twisted, rage boiling over his carefully crafted mask. "If you hadn't opened your mouth, Vanessa, none of this would have happened. You had to say their lives weren't worth your child's, didn't you? You handed them a reason to hate you and now I'm paying for it." "You told me to say it," she screamed, her voice raw with fury. "You whispered it to me before the cameras came in. You said if I played the grieving mother people would forgive us. This was your idea." His eyes widened, his mouth opening in shock. "Liar," he spat, slamming his hand against the defendant's table. The judge banged the gavel, shouting for order, but the room was already crackling with chaos. Reporters scribbled furiously, their eyes glinting like vultures circling fresh prey. I sat back, hands folded neatly in my lap, watching the destruction unfold like a stage play I had written. Outside the courthouse, the footage spread like wildfire. Clips of Vanessa screaming accusations, Ryan snapping back, hashtags trending by the hour. Hashtag Carter vs. Miller. Hashtag Fallen Sweethearts. Hashtag See Disaster Lies. Once their image had been pristine, the golden boy and his childhood friend bonded by tragedy. Now they were clowns in a public circus, their love story shredded into spectacle. Even those who had once sympathized with Vanessa recoiled. "She looks crazy," commenters wrote. "She's not grieving anymore, she's attacking him." And Ryan? His reputation as a grieving man of honor was long gone. Every time he opened his mouth he sounded like a snake trying to wriggle free. Weeks passed and the cracks widened. One evening I received a forwarded video. It was grainy, filmed by a bystander outside the hospital. Vanessa's voice shrieked from the wheelchair as she clung to Ryan's arm, her nails digging into his sleeve. "Don't you dare leave me," she cried. "I gave you everything. You can't just walk away." Ryan's face was pale, sweat dripping down his temples. He yanked his arm free with a snarl. "You gave me nothing but hell. You dragged me down with you. Do you think anyone pities me now? They look at me and see you." Her sobs rose higher, broken and desperate. "You promised. You said we'd be together." His laughter was hollow, bitter. "Together? Vanessa, I lost everything because of you. My house, my career, my future. You're nothing but dead weight." The crowd watching jeered, some laughing, others shaking their heads in disgust. Phones captured every second. I replayed the video twice that night, the corner of my mouth curling with quiet satisfaction. In court the tension grew unbearable. Ryan sat stiffly, avoiding Vanessa's gaze. Vanessa, meanwhile, alternated between sobbing pitifully and shooting daggers at him when she thought no one was looking. Their lawyers barely managed to keep them in check, their strategy collapsing as the two of them sabotaged their own defense. "Mr. Carter," the opposing lawyer asked one day, holding up the viral video I had first released, "is this or is this not you mocking the victims and coercing them into the water?" Ryan's face paled, his mouth opening. That wasn't me. That was..." But before he could finish, Vanessa interjected bitterly from her seat. "It was him. He pressured everyone. I only followed because he insisted." The judge's gavel slammed again, demanding silence. The room erupted in whispers. I sat, hands folded neatly, my expression serene. This was better than I had planned. Not only were they destroying their image, they were building the very case that would ruin them. The last nail in their coffin came quietly, almost anticlimactically. It was after another long hearing, Ryan storming out of the courtroom, his face thunderous. Vanessa tried to wheel after him, but he ignored her calls, his stride fast and angry. Finally she screamed, her voice raw with hysteria, echoing down the marble corridor. You'll regret this, Ryan. You'll regret betraying me. If I go down, I'm taking you with me. The words carried, bouncing against the high ceilings, captured by half a dozen reporters lurking nearby. By the next morning, the headlines spread across every platform. Vanessa Miller threatens Ryan Carter in court. I'll take you with me. Their bond, once painted as eternal, was now publicized as toxic, doomed, and poisonous. I stood by my window that evening, the city lights stretching into infinity, my reflection sharp against the glass. In my past life, I had once envied the intimacy between Ryan and Vanessa. The way he smiled at her, the way she clung to him like they were unbreakable. I had wondered if maybe I was the intruder, the extra piece in their story. But watching them now, devouring each other like starving wolves, I understood the truth. They were never strong. They were never golden. They were rot wrapped in ribbons, poison in a chalice. And now the world could finally taste their bitterness. I touched the faint scar on my neck, the ghost of his hands pressing me under the sea, and allowed myself a slow smile. The two of them had been my executioners once. Now they were each other's. It was strange how quietly people vanished. One week, Ryan Carter's name still echoed in every headline, attached to words like scandal, lawsuit, liability. The next, he slipped off the public stage like smoke through fingers, leaving behind nothing but whispers. I heard them, of course. Whispers always found their way to me. Loan sharks got him. They sent him overseas for labor. Some say he's working in construction camps, others. Organs. I heard they sold him for parts. No one knew the truth. No one cared to. The world moved on, fickle as always, already hungry for its next scandal. But I didn't need confirmation. Ryan Carter was gone. And whether his body was breaking under foreign sun or lying cold in an unmarked grave, it made no difference. His story had ended exactly the way it deserved to. In disgrace, alone, forgotten. Vanessa's fall was slower, more pitiful. 4 months after the trials, she lingered in hospitals, feeding off the last scraps of Ryan's desperation. But when the money ran dry and the creditors closed in, even that door shut on her. She had no career, no savings, no allies. The friends who once basked in her glow abandoned her when her beauty became fragile and her reputation poison. I heard she tried to find Ryan again, scouring their old haunts, calling numbers that no longer worked. She found nothing. Without him, she unraveled. Her health, already fragile from the injuries and surgeries, deteriorated quickly without treatment. The last time I saw her, it wasn't in person but in a blurred photo that surfaced online. Vanessa Miller, once the darling of every room she entered, hunched on a street corner in a threadbare coat, her eyes sunken, her face pale, her hand outstretched for change. A few cruel souls recognized her and snapped pictures, uploading them with captions dripping with schadenfreude, from socialite to beggar. Vanessa Miller's karma. Not long after, another whisper found me. She died. Pneumonia. On the streets. They found her in the rain. I said nothing. What was there to say? The world expected me to gloat, perhaps. To bask in the spectacle of their ruin. And I did, in a way. Every time I closed my eyes, I remembered the salt water burning my lungs, Ryan's hand crushing my throat, his voice spitting hatred as he drowned me for a child that was never meant to be. Every time I remembered Vanessa's smirk as she paraded her place at his side, mocking me, dismissing me, relishing in my humiliation. Yes, watching their downfall tasted sweet. But sweeter still was the silence they left behind. For the first time in 2 lives I was free. The lawsuits wrapped neatly. The courts ruled in my favor, forcing Ryan to repay every cent he had stolen. Of course, the money trickled in only through seized assets and scraps left behind after the loan sharks took their share. But it wasn't about the numbers. It was about justice. It was about finally holding in my hands the proof that I had never been the foolish girl they painted me to be. One evening I returned to the beach. The same cursed shoreline where it had all begun. Where I had drowned once. Where I had vowed revenge the moment my last breath slipped away. The sea was calm now, waves lapping gently against the sand, moonlight silvering the water. The warning signs still stood, weathered but firm, dangerous currents. No swimming. I stood there for a long time, breathing in the salt air, feeling the cool breeze against my face. And then softly I spoke aloud, though no one was there to hear. You tried to kill me here, Ryan. You thought love meant ownership, and when I no longer served your grief, you ended me. And you, Vanessa. You thought beauty and tears would always shield you, that the world would bow to your fragility. But the sea doesn't bow. It takes. And so did I. The waves crashed once as if in answer. I closed my eyes, touching the faint scar still visible on my neck. Once it had been a mark of my weakness, a reminder of the night I died. Now it was proof that I had lived again. Proof that I had won. Life after vengeance was lighter than I expected. I rebuilt carefully, quietly. The money I reclaimed was invested into ventures of my own choosing, not siphoned away into Ryan's reckless schemes. My name, once dragged through mud by their lies, now stood polished by my resilience and the undeniable evidence I had provided. People whispered still, they always would. But now the whispers carried a different tone. Respect. Admiration. Even awe. Claire Dawson, the woman who survived. The woman who fought back. The woman who won. Sometimes late at night I would still dream of the ocean. But in those dreams I no longer thrashed beneath the waves, lungs burning, throat crushed. Instead I stood on the shore, steady, watching the storm rage far out at sea, safe on dry land. And always I woke with a smile. For years I had lived defined by Ryan Carter and Vanessa Miller, by their love, their betrayal, their cruelty. Now with them erased from the world I was free to define myself. No longer a victim. No longer the villain they painted me to be. Just me. Claire Dawson. Alive. Reborn. And this time I would live for myself. The end.